About the updates and also the situation happening right now in the Philippines. We're now connected with our friend and correspondent from the Philippines, Camille Elemia, to discuss about how the election is going so far. Good morning, Camille, all the way from Manila.
Good morning.
This is an exciting time for the Philippines. I hope you started to vote, but could you give us an explanation of how important and what the dynamic currently is regarding this particular election in the Philippines?
This is like an election like no other. As researchers and analysts and several Filipinos actually would point out, this is like a battle for the soul of the nation precisely because of the history of the country and also the history of the presidential candidates running, specifically former senator and now presidential frontrunner Ferdinand Marcos Jr. So half of the registered voters come from the youth sector, from ages 18 to 41. But I mean, like the commissions on elections that the election body here says they will be like the driving force these elections. But the thing is, the youth vote is actually divided between Marcos and Robredo, our current vice president. This is mainly because of social media, because many of the youth in the Philippines right now do not have any memory, did not actually experience what it was like during martial law. So their analysts point out to how they are more prone to disinformation online as compared to the other, like the pro-Robredo youth. These are the driving force of the grassroots campaign. So if you would go to the rallies of Robredo, you would see it's like the energy is so vibrant, so colorful. It's usually the youth that actually do the events, schedule the events all on their own.
I mean, you'd think that vibrant campaign would definitely attract all of the youth population.
Well, looks like a lot of fun for sure. Now, Camille, we've been reporting on opinion polls for the past couple of weeks, and it seems to me that it's almost like Marcos Jr. almost has a double the number of approval rating for him as opposed to Leni Robredo. How accurate are those opinion polls? Because those from the Robredo camp are claiming that this race will be a lot tighter than initially that we thought.
Right. Almost all election surveys point to a possible Marcos win because the recent survey, pre-election survey shows that Marcos actually has 53 to 56% of votes. And historically, in the past elections, you would see that surveys at this point rarely get the data wrong. So in the past, you would see the survey frontrunners at this point, at the tail end of the campaign, they eventually become the president. But the difference now is that this is also the first time that it's almost 100% volunteer-driven campaign for the camp of Robredo. So the opposition is quick to dismiss surveys, which is somehow what we've been seeing in the past elections. Like, you know, when they see their candidates increasing their numbers, they suddenly express belief in these surveys.
Right.
But when their candidate is lagging, they express doubt. But again, they are banking on the energy of the volunteers. It's an organic campaign, so they're banking on that. However, we talked to several political analysts, and they're saying with the wealth, with the experience, and with the preparation of the Marcos campaign, it's highly likely that Marcos will win this election.
Yeah.
So the sentiment here is like, we're expecting Marcos to win, but people are hoping that it's still Robredo.
Right. Got it.
I mean, this is very interesting because there is a way, right? There is a way that if people want to want Robredo to win, sorry, I'm getting a hand of the excitement, that, you know, voters of other candidates could switch. Do you know if any kinds of coalitions have been formed, at least in regards to support? Because this is going to be, if you say this is going to be the voice of the nation, the soul of the nation is going to be determined with this election, do you think that would be possible?
Unfortunately, the opposition, whose expected leader or de facto leader was Robredo, failed to unite themselves. Initially, there were talks between Manila Mayor Isko Moreno, Senator Panfilo Lacson, and even world boxing champion Manny Pacquiao. They talked with Robredo to try to unite themselves, but then at the end of the day, they weren't able to decide who should run and who should just back out or who should slide down to vice president. But now we're seeing it's not so easy. When you talk about supporters shifting alliances, it's not so easy because let's say Isko Moreno and Manny Pacquiao, those voting for them, like if they back out, if these candidates back out, it does not necessarily mean that the support of their supporters would transfer to Leni Robredo. Surveys show that people would still choose Marcos over Robredo, especially for the supporters of Isko Moreno and Manny Pacquiao. So that's the tendency. So now, speaking of Robredo's campaign, when we look at it, it's kind of beneficial to her campaign that Manny Pacquiao and Isko Moreno are still running for the presidency.
Right.
Because if not, then most likely the votes for that will go to Marcos.
Right. So, you know, you mentioned earlier about the more than 50%. I believe it's somewhere around 56% of the voting age is between 18 and 41. Many of those have not experienced the previous Marcos that was in power. But how else has Bongbong Marcos Jr. Been appealing in order to get this large majority of the opinion polls and most likely the votes so far?
Two things. First is the decades-long disinformation, especially on social media. There are studies that show that some of the false information have propagated as early as 2012, 2013.
Wow.
And that was 3 years before he ran for vice president in 2016 and more than 7 years before running for the presidency. And second is the failure of that 1986 People Power Revolution that ousted Marcos. So people thought that that would solve the problem, that would, strengthen the institutions in the country and all that. But until now, it still hasn't translated to that. So there is that disillusionment. But more than that, it's really the disinformation. If you visit the Philippines and you talk to people, ordinary people on the streets, and ask them who they're voting for, chances are you would hear someone saying Marcos, and ask them about it, they would say, Marcos, the Marcos family has thousands of metric tons of gold, and that this is the reason for their wealth. And it's not ill-gotten wealth, as court documents would say. And then they would say that there's the Marcos family has done so many good things for the country. So those kinds of narratives have seeded in social media, and you would see that it has also translated to on-the-ground campaigning and on-the-ground sentiment.
That's very, very interesting, especially because you seem to have a lot of celebrities and a lot of, crowd gaining when it comes to candidacy. But moving on from polls now, we want to talk about the change that candidates can offer to the Philippines if this is to be, the most significant votes in a very long time. Well, which candidate do you think has the biggest, chance to make a difference? And do you think that if Bongbong elected, would see any significant changes from the current president, Duterte?
Well, Bongbong himself has said that he would continue the projects of President Rodrigo Duterte, like the infrastructure project, and most likely the closer ties to China, because just a backgrounder, the diplomatic ties between the Philippines and China started under the first Marcos presidency. So we're expecting more of that. It's kind of interesting to kind of wait and see how it will be like, because we are traditionally an American ally. Aside from that, Marcos Jr. has also said that he will continue the fight against illegal drugs. We're not sure what kind or form will that take, because as you may know, the drug war of President Duterte has been controversial with thousands of people killed. He hasn't really explained it yet. As for Robredo also, it's more of like, for Robredo, it's more of like a 180-degree change if she does win, because she plans to reinstate the franchise of the biggest broadcaster, ABS-CBN, which was shut down under Duterte. And also, she is pushing for transparency in government dealings, which is kind of a promise of every presidential candidate, but once they are in office, it never really happens. So we have to wait and see if Robredo wins, if she really gets to do that. And also more like freedom of the press. So basically an opposite of President Duterte. So that will be the big switch
Right.
if she does win.
Okay, well, let's shift our focus a little bit to the vice presidency. What does the Marcos Jr. win mean for Sara Duterte? And how do you see the vice presidency vote playing out? Because your country is a little bit different in that where each president and vice president is voted on separately.
Right. Actually, if you look at it, like the surveys before the election, it's actually Sara Duterte who has a strong following. It was more of beneficial for Marcos that Sara Duterte actually chose to run for vice president and not as president. Because election surveys before would show that Sara Duterte is actually the top choice for presidential candidate. The
Right.
popularity of her father brushed off on her. So if Marcos wins and Sara Duterte wins, which is highly possible at this point because both of them are leading in surveys, then it's gonna be President Duterte version 2.0 to simplify it, because they promised continuity of all majority programs of the government. I think the main difference if Marcos and Duterte will win is because our president, our sitting president Duterte, he tends to be bombastic in his speeches and his statements. He would curse at the Pope. He would curse at former President Barack Obama. So Marcos is not the type of politician. He's actually kind of shy and a slow speaker. So we will not be expecting a Duterte like that. And Sara Duterte, while she may be viewed as a strong politician, as a strong woman, because before, years ago, she actually punched a sheriff in their province.
Wow.
But we are seeing kind of when it comes to speaking and dealing with dignitaries and all that, we're expecting a calmer situation if
hope
these
so.
two win. Actually, even if Leni Robredo wins, it will be a calmer because our President Duterte is really one of a kind.
We can see that. But you've stated that you've actually, behind the scenes before, that you've actually already voted. But how soon can we see quick count predictions for today's election? I'm trying to look at live in the Philippines online. I still haven't found it. And how soon can we see a quick count prediction or ongoing, live prediction of the election?
So election starts at 6 a.m. I actually voted 6 a.m. As soon as the polls open. And then it will close at 7 p.m.
Right.
So most likely as soon as the polls close, because we have an automated election in 95% of the country. So most likely the unofficial transmitted votes will be counted. So we can have an idea, but it's not enough to gauge who will be the next president or vice president. So based on past experiences and also based on recent statements from Commission on Election Officers, it's safe to say around a week, we will kind of know clearly who will be the next president. But just during the 2016 elections of Duterte, because he had a really huge lead, so all the other lagging candidates decided to concede the night of the elections, except for the second in line.
Right.
Let's see.
Okay, well, we're very much looking forward to reporting on the results
Yes.
as early as tomorrow, but possibly up to a week. Camille, thank you so much for your time and for your earlier contributions as well. We do appreciate a more in-depth look into the ongoing Philippines elections, and we hope the elections runs smoothly for the rest of the day.
We hope all the best for the Philippines, and thank you so much.